I'm Ashley, 34 years old, and I thought I had the perfect life until our 5th anniversary dinner last spring. Ryan looked so handsome in his tailored suit across the candlelit table. The restaurant's soft lighting caught the gold of his wedding band as he reached for my hand. Then my best friend Stephanie arrived late with her 3-year-old daughter Emma. What happened next shattered my world in seconds. Emma spotted Ryan, broke free from her mother's grip, and ran straight to him, arms outstretched, squealing, "Daddy. I missed you." The room froze. My heart stopped. Before I tell you how my world collapsed that night, hit subscribe and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. You won't believe how this nightmare unfolded in my supposedly perfect marriage. Life before that devastating night seemed picture perfect. I had a thriving career as a marketing executive at Horizon Media, a job that challenged me and provided the financial stability I'd always worked toward. My office overlooked the city skyline, and I'd often pause during hectic days to remind myself how far I'd come from my small-town beginnings. The corner office, the respect of my colleagues, the independence I'd built for myself, all pieces of the life I'd carefully constructed. Ryan entered my carefully ordered world 7 years ago at a corporate charity gala. I was coordinating our company's sponsorship, running on pure adrenaline and coffee when he approached me with 2 glasses of champagne. "You look like you could use a break," he said with a smile that made my professional composure falter. With his sharp blue eyes and quiet confidence, Ryan stood out among the typical business types. He was an architectural engineer, creative yet analytical, ambitious yet grounded. We talked until the cleaning staff began breaking down tables, and exchanged numbers as the night ended. Our romance moved swiftly but never felt rushed. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. Ryan proposed at sunset on a coastal hiking trail, the ocean stretching endlessly before us. "I want to build a life with you," he said, "one as beautiful and strong as the houses I design." Our wedding was everything I'd dreamed of, intimate yet elegant, surrounded by our closest friends and family. I remember Stephanie adjusting my veil just before I walked down the aisle, whispering, "You found a good one, Ash." Stephanie. My best friend since our freshman year of college when we were randomly assigned as roommates. She was the extrovert to my introvert, pulling me to campus parties but respecting when I needed quiet study time. We balanced each other perfectly. After graduation, when I moved to the city for my first job, she followed 3 months later. We navigated early adulthood together, terrible apartments, worse dates, career uncertainties, and eventually, our paths into more stable lives. At least, my path became stable. Stephanie's took a different turn when she met Greg at a mutual friend's birthday party. Their relationship burned hot and fast, and when she discovered she was pregnant just 8 months in, Greg proposed. I had reservations, everything seemed rushed, but supported her choice. My concerns proved justified when Greg abandoned her during her 7th month of pregnancy, leaving nothing but a note saying he wasn't ready for fatherhood. The following months showcased the depth of our friendship. I attended birthing classes with her, painted the nursery, and held her hand throughout 14 hours of labor. When little Emma finally arrived, I was the first person after Stephanie to hold her. "You're her godmother," Stephanie declared, exhausted but radiant. "The only person I trust completely." As Stephanie navigated single motherhood, Ryan and I became fixtures in their lives. Sunday brunches at our place became tradition. Ryan especially took to Emma, his natural warmth and patience making him the perfect playmate. He'd build elaborate block towers for her to gleefully destroy, chase her through the park, and read the same storybooks repeatedly without complaint. "You're going to be an amazing father someday," I'd tell him, my heart swelling watching them together. These moments held particular poignancy because of our ongoing struggle with infertility. After 2 years of trying naturally, we consulted specialists who recommended IVF. 3 failed rounds later, thousands of dollars spent, and countless hormone injections that left me emotional and bruised, we were taking a break that increasingly felt permanent. Ryan assured me he was content building our life together, just the 2 of us, but I caught the longing in his eyes when he played with Emma. "Uncle Ryan, higher." Emma would squeal as he pushed her on the swings, her blonde curls catching sunlight. I snapped countless photos of these moments, creating albums titled Emma's Adventures with her favorite uncle. Stephanie often commented how blessed Emma was to have Ryan in her life, especially with Greg's complete absence. Planning our 5th anniversary celebration, I wanted something special but not overly extravagant. The fertility treatments had strained our finances, and though Ryan's architecture firm was thriving, we were building our savings again. I reserved a table at Costello's, an upscale Italian restaurant where we'd had our first official date. Initially, I envisioned a romantic evening just for us, but Ryan suggested including our closest friends. "It's not just about celebrating us," he explained, "but the community that supports our marriage." His thoughtfulness was one of the countless reasons I loved him, so I extended invitations to 3 couples, Melissa and Jake, who we often vacationed with, Natalie and her new boyfriend Chris, and of course, Stephanie. The week before our anniversary, I noticed some peculiarities. Ryan was distracted, checking his phone more frequently. Twice, he took calls in the other room, voice lowered. When I asked, he mentioned a stressful new project with a demanding client. I believed him, we'd built our relationship on trust, after all. Stephanie, too, seemed off when we met for our monthly lunch. She cancelled our shopping trip afterward, claiming Emma wasn't feeling well, though she'd mentioned her daughter was with a babysitter during our meal. Looking back, the signs were there. The way Ryan asked if Stephanie was bringing Emma to our anniversary dinner. My suggestion that maybe an upscale restaurant wasn't appropriate for a 3-year-old. Stephanie's insistence that she couldn't find a sitter. Ryan quickly saying, "I don't mind if Emma comes. It's always good to see her." I dismissed the flicker of unease. These were the 2 people I trusted most in the world, my husband and my best friend. What reason did I have to question their intentions? I couldn't have imagined how completely that trust would shatter, how blind I'd been to what was happening right before my eyes. Costello's hadn't changed since our first date. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over white tablecloths and polished silverware. The maitre d' recognized us, congratulating us on 5 years as he led us to the best table in the house, a corner spot with views of both the restaurant's elegant interior and the city lights beyond the windows. I'd spent hours preparing for this evening, selecting a black cocktail dress that Ryan had always loved, getting my hair and nails done, even splurging on the perfume he'd given me last Christmas that I usually saved for special occasions. Ryan looked equally polished in his charcoal suit and the blue tie I'd bought to match his eyes. When he helped me into my chair, his hand lingered on my shoulder, and I felt a rush of gratitude for our life together. Melissa and Jake arrived first, bearing a gift-wrapped package and enthusiastic hugs. Natalie and Chris followed shortly after, apologizing for being a few minutes late. We ordered drinks and fell into easy conversation, sharing stories of how we'd all met, the kind of comfortable reminiscing that comes with years of friendship. "Stephanie just texted," Ryan announced, checking his phone. "She's running about 20 minutes behind. Should we wait to order appetizers?" "Let's go ahead," I suggested. "She can catch up when she arrives." Our first course had just been served when Stephanie finally appeared, Emma in tow. My goddaughter looked adorable in a frilly pink dress, her blonde curls arranged in pigtails tied with matching ribbons. Stephanie, meanwhile, had outdone herself. Her red dress hugged every curve, the neckline dipping lower than seemed appropriate for a child-inclusive dinner. I noticed Jake averting his eyes as she approached, while Ryan's lingered a beat too long. "Sorry we're late," Stephanie announced, not sounding particularly apologetic. Emma couldn't decide which shoes to wear. "Say hello to everyone, sweetie." Emma, who typically displayed the standard shyness of a 3-year-old around groups, showed no such hesitation tonight. Her eyes scanned the table and locked onto Ryan. What happened next plays in my mind in slow motion whenever I recall that night. Emma pulled away from her mother's hand. Her face lit up with pure joy, the unrestrained delight that only children can express so openly. She ran, her patent leather shoes clacking against the hardwood floor, straight to Ryan's side of the table. "Daddy," she squealed, loud enough that nearby diners turned to look. "Daddy, I missed you today." The table fell silent. My champagne glass froze halfway to my lips. Melissa's eyes widened, darting between me and Ryan. Jake suddenly became very interested in rearranging his silverware. Natalie reached for my hand under the table while Chris, bless him, looked completely confused, being the newest addition to our circle. Ryan's reaction haunts me most. There was shock, yes, but not enough. Not the complete bewilderment that should accompany a child mistakenly calling you daddy when you're not her father. Instead, after that initial moment of surprise, his face softened. He glanced quickly at Stephanie before turning to Emma. "Hey there, princess," he said, his voice gentle as he lifted her onto his lap. He didn't correct her. Not once did he say, "I'm not your daddy, I'm your Uncle Ryan." He simply adjusted her dress and asked if she was hungry. My eyes shot to Stephanie, expecting embarrassment, an apology, perhaps a gentle correction to her daughter. Instead, she was calmly taking her seat, arranging her napkin in her lap as though nothing unusual had occurred. "Kids say the funniest things," she finally offered with a practiced laugh. "She's been calling all men daddy lately. Last week it was the mail carrier." The excuse rang hollow. Emma had never called Jake or Chris or any other man in our circle daddy. And the possessive way she clung to Ryan, her small hand patting his cheek with familiar affection, suggested this wasn't a one-time confusion. Somehow, we continued with dinner. The conversation resumed, though strained. I picked at my sea base, appetite gone, while Ryan ate one-handed, the other arm securely around Emma, who remained on his lap through the entire main course. Stephanie ordered a second, then third glass of wine, her lipstick leaving blood-red marks on the rim. During dessert, when I excused myself to the restroom, I took longer than necessary, splashing cold water on my face and trying to steady my breathing. Upon returning, I paused near the bar, out of sight from our table. Ryan had moved his chair closer to Stephanie's, and they were speaking in hushed tones while Emma colored on the children's menu the server had brought. "Can't keep doing this," I caught Ryan saying. "It's not fair to." "Don't start," Stephanie interrupted. "Not tonight." We agreed. "But did you see her face?" "I never wanted to hurt." They abruptly stopped as Melissa approached their side of the table. I returned moments later, pretending I hadn't overheard anything, though my hands trembled as I reached for my water glass. The drive home was excruciating. Ryan kept the radio on, filling the car with mindless pop music instead of addressing the elephant in the room. When I finally broke the silence as we turned onto our street, my voice sounded foreign to my own ears. "Are you going to explain what happened tonight?" Ryan's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "You're overreacting." Emma's confused. "She doesn't have a dad in her life, and I'm the closest male figure she has. It's developmentally normal." "Then why didn't you correct her?" I pressed. "And what were you and Stephanie whispering about at the table?" He pulled into our driveway and cut the engine before turning to me, his expression a mixture of frustration and, was that guilt? She was apologizing for Emma's confusion, and I was telling her it was fine. Jesus, Ashley, they're our friends. Stephanie's been through enough with Greg abandoning them. Are you really going to make tonight about your insecurities? The argument exploded once we were inside. Ryan's defensiveness only intensified my suspicions. Why was he turning this around on me? Why was he more concerned about Stephanie's feelings than mine? When I brought up their whispered conversation, he claimed I'd misheard, that they were discussing Emma's upcoming preschool applications. "You're being paranoid," he said, loosening his tie with sharp, angry movements. "I'm going to bed. I have an early meeting tomorrow." He fell asleep, or pretended to, almost immediately, while I lay awake, replaying every interaction between Ryan, Stephanie, and Emma over the past months. The play dates I wasn't invited to. The times Ryan volunteered to drop something off at Stephanie's apartment when I was busy. The unexplained decrease in our sex life. Around 3 a.m., with Ryan's breathing deep and regular beside me, I did something I'd never done before. I reached for his phone on the nightstand, grateful he'd never changed his password from our anniversary date. With shaking fingers, I opened his messages. What I found confirmed my worst fears and shattered my world forever. The text messages between Ryan and Stephanie had been mostly deleted, leaving suspicious gaps in their conversation history. The few remaining exchanges were vague but telling. Miss you, can't wait to see you, Emma keeps asking. Nothing explicitly incriminating, but nothing innocent either. The familiarity in their tone made my stomach churn. When Ryan's alarm went off at 6 a.m., I was sitting at the kitchen island, his phone placed deliberately before me. He stopped short when he saw me, still in last night's dress, eyes red from crying and lack of sleep. How could you? My voice was barely a whisper. His reaction told me everything. Not outrage at the invasion of privacy, not confusion about what I meant. Instead, his shoulders slumped, and he reached for the counter as if needing support. It's not what you think, he began, the classic line of cheaters everywhere. Then what is it, Ryan? Explain to me why you're exchanging miss you texts with my best friend. Explain why her daughter called you daddy. Explain why you've been lying to me. His explanation was both practiced and pathetic. He claimed he'd been helping Stephanie navigate single motherhood, that Emma had grown attached to him, that the messages were taken out of context. I didn't want to worry you while you were dealing with the stress of the failed IVF treatments, he said, as if his deceit were an act of compassion. I called in sick to work, something I'd done perhaps twice in my entire career. My mind couldn't process spreadsheets and marketing strategies when my personal life was imploding. After Ryan left, reluctantly, watching me as if I might set fire to his belongings the moment he walked out, I called Melissa. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our homes, away from my neighborhood where we might be seen by mutual acquaintances. The moment she slid into the booth across from me, her face filled with concern, I broke down. I think Ryan and Stephanie are having an affair, I managed between sobs. Instead of shock or disbelief, Melissa's expression shifted to something worse, confirmation. You've noticed something, I said flatly. It wasn't a question. She nodded, reaching for my hand. I wasn't sure, and I didn't want to hurt you without proof. But there have been moments. At Jake's birthday party last month, I saw them in the kitchen. They weren't doing anything explicitly wrong, but they jumped apart when I walked in. And the way they look at each other sometimes. Each word was a dagger. Not only was I being betrayed, but it was apparently obvious enough that others had noticed. How long had I been the oblivious fool in this equation? Back home, I began a methodical investigation, surprising myself with my own calm. I pulled up our credit card statements online, scanning for anomalies. There they were. Charges at Hotel Bellamy on 3 separate occasions when Ryan had claimed to be working late. A jewelry purchase from Tiffany that I'd never received. Dinners at restaurants on evenings he'd said he was meeting clients. The evidence mounted with sickening speed. In his desk drawer, I found receipts for toys, presents for Emma that I hadn't known about. His calendar revealed blocked-off afternoons with vague labels like site visit or consultant meeting that corresponded with times Stephanie had been too busy to meet me for lunch. When Ryan returned that evening, I confronted him with my findings. His reaction shifted from denial to anger. You're spying on me now? Going through my private things? He deflected, his voice rising. This is exactly why I couldn't be honest with you, you're unstable. The fertility treatments changed you, made you paranoid and desperate. The gaslighting was so blatant it would have been laughable if it weren't so painful. He was trying to use our struggle to conceive, our shared grief, as a weapon against me. In that moment, I saw a stranger wearing my husband's face, someone capable of cruelty I'd never imagined. Get out, I whispered. Stay with your client tonight. After he left, I downloaded a tracking app to his phone remotely, something I'd have considered an unforgivable invasion of privacy just days earlier. Now it felt like self-preservation. The next day, watching the dot of his location move across the city map, my worst fears were confirmed. At 2 p.m., when he should have been at a project meeting downtown, his icon remained stationary for 2 hours at Stephanie's address. I called Natalie next. As a family law attorney, she'd seen this scenario play out countless times from a professional distance. Now she listened with growing concern as her friend became another statistic. Document everything, she advised. Every unexplained absence, every suspicious charge. Forward copies of any revealing texts to yourself. Michigan is a no-fault divorce state, but evidence of infidelity can sometimes impact property division, especially if he's been spending significant marital assets on the affair. The clinical way she outlined my next steps made the situation feel both more real and more manageable. This wasn't just a personal nightmare, it was a legal scenario with established protocols. And Ashley, she added before hanging up, I think you should consider hiring a private investigator. Not just for potential legal leverage, but for your own peace of mind. You deserve to know the full truth. The old Ashley would have balked at such a suggestion. The new Ashley, forged in betrayal, made the call that afternoon. The manila envelope from Dawson Investigative Services arrived exactly 7 days later. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at it for nearly an hour before finding the courage to break the seal. Inside were dozens of photographs, each more devastating than the last. Ryan and Stephanie walking hand in hand through a park I didn't recognize. Ryan carrying Emma on his shoulders, Stephanie laughing beside them, a perfect family portrait. Ryan and Stephanie kissing in his car, parked on a side street near her apartment. The three of them entering and exiting the Hotel Bellamy, Emma clutching a stuffed animal I'd never seen before. The most crushing image showed Ryan kneeling before Emma on a playground, wiping ice cream from her chin with the tender attentiveness he'd once shown me. The investigator had thoughtfully included dates and times with each photo. This particular moment had occurred last Tuesday, when Ryan had told me he was meeting with contractors. As I spread the photographs across the table, a brochure fell from between them. Picking it up, I felt the last piece click into place. Paternity testing services, accurate, confidential results in 48 hours. So that was it. Ryan believed he might be Emma's biological father. My mind raced backward, calculating dates and possibilities. Emma was just over 3 years old. 3 years and 4 months, to be precise. Which meant she would have been conceived roughly 4 years ago. Ryan and I had been dating for nearly 3 years before our wedding, so we'd been together for almost 7 years total. The timeline made it possible, but only if their betrayal had begun far earlier than I'd imagined. Had our entire relationship been a lie? Had my husband and best friend been carrying on behind my back from the beginning? The thought made me physically ill. I called my office and arranged to work remotely for the rest of the week, claiming a family emergency. Then I informed Ryan I was flying to visit my sister in Phoenix for a few days, needing space to think. It was the first outright lie I'd ever told him, and it fell from my lips with surprising ease. Instead of going to the airport, I checked into a hotel downtown. For the next 2 days, I watched through the investigators' updates as Ryan's routine changed with my absence. Without the need to maintain appearances, he spent both nights at Stephanie's apartment. The investigators' notes indicated they'd arrived together to pick Emma up from preschool, playing the role of co-parents. On the 3rd day, when Ryan's location showed him at Stephanie's apartment in the middle of the afternoon, I made my decision. I took a rideshare to her building, my heart pounding so violently I feared it might burst through my chest. The doorman, recognizing me from previous visits, smiled and held the door without question. Standing before Stephanie's apartment door, I heard muffled laughter inside, Ryan's deep chuckle, Stephanie's higher pitch, and Emma's delighted squeal. A happy family. My husband, my best friend, and the child that could have been mine if circumstances were different. I knocked. The laughter abruptly ceased. Footsteps approached, and then Ryan's face appeared, transforming from annoyance to shock as he registered my presence. Ashley, he breathed. You're supposed to be in Phoenix. And you're supposed to be at work, I replied, pushing past him into the apartment. The scene inside confirmed every suspicion. Stephanie stood frozen in the living room, wearing one of Ryan's t-shirts as a dress, her hair damp from a recent shower. Emma was surrounded by toys on the floor, many I recognized from our home, things Ryan had gradually been relocating. On the coffee table sat wine glasses and the remains of a takeout lunch, alongside a folder bearing the logo of the paternity testing service from the brochure. "How long?" I asked, my voice steady despite the earthquake inside me. They exchanged glances, a silent communication between people intimate enough to read each other's thoughts. The gesture itself was another betrayal. "Ashley, we should talk about this privately," Ryan began, reaching for my arm. I jerked away. "How long?" I repeated, louder this time. 2 years, Stephanie finally answered, her chin lifting defiantly. "But it started before that. The night of your bachelorette party, when you went back to the hotel early with a migraine. It was just once, we were drunk, and we both regretted it immediately. Until you decided to revive the regret 2 years ago," I said, the timeline becoming clearer. "Around the time we started fertility treatments." Ryan at least had the decency to look ashamed. "It wasn't planned. We ran into each other at that fundraiser, the one you couldn't attend because of your presentation the next morning. One thing led to another. And you think Emma might be yours," I finished, gesturing to the folder. "We don't know for sure," Stephanie said, moving to stand beside Ryan, a united front against me. "Greg always claimed she wasn't his, that the timing didn't work. But Ryan and I realized it was possible, and Emma deserves to know her real father." "What Emma deserved was not to be caught in the middle of your selfish decisions," I said, looking at the confused child who had stopped playing to watch the adults arguing. "My goddaughter. The little girl I'd loved since she was born, who now might represent the ultimate betrayal." "Don't you dare take the moral high ground," Stephanie snapped, her voice turning vicious. "You with your perfect career and your perfect house and your perfect husband. Do you know how sick I am of hearing about your problems? Poor Ashley can't have a baby. Meanwhile, I've been raising one alone, struggling to make ends meet. You haven't been alone, though, have you?" I turned to Ryan. "You've been playing daddy while I was going through hell with the fertility treatments. Was that your plan all along? String me along while building your real family on the side?" Ryan's face crumpled. "I never meant to hurt you, Ash. I love you, I do. But seeing you go through those treatments, watching how desperate you were for something I'd already given Stephanie. I was going to tell you after our anniversary. I've been looking for the right time." "The right time to tell me you're leaving me for my best friend?" I laughed bitterly. "When exactly would that be?" "I care about you both," he said, the pathetic excuse hanging in the air. "But Emma needs her father. You don't even know if you are her father," I shouted, finally losing my composure. "And even if you are, it doesn't justify years of lying and cheating." "This is exactly why we didn't tell you," Stephanie interjected. "You're hysterical. You can't handle difficult truths. Ryan and I have a connection you wouldn't understand." Something in me snapped at her words. This woman who had cried on my shoulder over Greg's abandonment, who had accepted my help with midnight feedings and doctor's appointments, who had stood beside me at my wedding. She was now justifying stealing my husband because they had a connection. "Keep him," I said, a strange calm settling over me. "You deserve each other. But don't expect me to play the understanding ex-wife or the supportive former friend. You're dead to me, both of you." I walked out, ignoring Ryan calling my name. In the elevator, I leaned against the wall, expecting tears that didn't come. Instead, I felt hollow, as if everything that made me who I was had been scooped out, leaving only an empty shell. The drive home was a blur. I walked through our front door, soon to be just my door or perhaps neither of ours, and found Ryan had already been busy in my absence. Drawers were partially emptied, gaps on bookshelves where his favorites had stood. He'd been moving out incrementally, I realized. Preparing his exit while maintaining the charade. I sank onto our sofa, the one we'd spent hours selecting, arguing playfully about leather versus fabric. And finally allowed myself to break down completely. Great, heaving sobs tore through me, the kind that leave you gasping for breath and physically aching. I cried for the marriage I thought I had, for the friend I'd lost, for the betrayal that had been happening right under my nose while I was injecting myself with hormones and praying for a baby. Hours later, the front door opened. Ryan entered cautiously, as if approaching a wounded animal. I'd run out of tears by then, sitting in darkness as evening fell. "I came to get some more of my things," he said unnecessarily, a duffel bag in his hand. "I'll be staying at Stephanie's for now." "Of course you will," I replied, my voice hoarse from crying. "Ashley, we need to talk about this rationally. About the divorce, about the house." "The divorce," I repeated, the word like acid on my tongue. "You've already decided, then?" He had the audacity to look offended. "What did you expect? That we'd stay married after what happened today?" What I expected was a husband who kept his vows. What I expected was a best friend who respected boundaries. What I expected was not to have my entire life revealed as a cruel joke. I stood, finding strength in my anger. "Take whatever you want tonight. The rest can wait until I've spoken to my lawyer." As he moved through the house, collecting clothes and toiletries, I noticed him hesitate at our bedroom closet, reaching toward the top shelf. I knew immediately what he was after. "Looking for the nursery items?" I asked from the doorway, causing him to startle. "The gender-neutral onesies and the stuffed animals you insisted we buy for when it happens? Were those always meant for Emma?" His silence was confirmation enough. "Get out," I whispered. "Get out before I call the police and report you for theft." "It's my house too," he began. "Not anymore," I said with finality. "Not ever again." After he left, I changed the locks, disconnected his access to our security system, and opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. As I poured a glass, I realized this was, in its way, a milestone worth marking, the end of my marriage and the beginning of whatever came next. The week following the confrontation passed in a fog of grief and disbelief. I moved through my days like a ghost, performing basic functions without truly being present. Showering took enormous effort. Eating became an afterthought. Sleep arrived in fitful bursts, interrupted by nightmares where I relived the moment Emma called Ryan daddy in endless variations. Melissa and Natalie established an unofficial rotation, ensuring I wasn't alone for too long. They brought groceries, forced me to eat, and took turns sleeping on my couch despite my insistence that I was fine. Their kindness was a lifeline I clung to when drowning seemed easier. "You need to eat something besides toast," Melissa urged on day 3, placing a container of homemade soup before me. "Jake's mom's recipe. Jewish penicillin, she calls it." I managed a few spoonfuls to appease her, though everything tasted like cardboard. "Has anyone else heard?" I finally asked the question that had been haunting me. Melissa's hesitation told me everything. "People are talking," she admitted. "Ryan's been telling some friends it was a mutual decision, that you both realized you wanted different things." The unfairness of his narrative made me laugh bitterly. Different things. Yes, I wanted fidelity and honesty. He wanted my best friend and her daughter. "No one who knows you believes him," Natalie assured me when she arrived to take the evening shift in Operation Monitor Ashley. "And those who believe him aren't worth your energy." I took 2 weeks of medical leave from work, something I'd never done before. My boss, who'd witnessed my dedication through migraines and flu seasons, didn't question the request. "Take whatever time you need," she said. "Your projects will wait." The shame of explaining my situation to family was its own unique torture. My parents, still happily married after 40 years, were stunned into rare silence when I called. My sister immediately offered to fly in, but I declined. Having her witness my humiliation seemed unbearable. "Did you have any idea?" my mother finally asked, her voice small and confused. "Were there signs?" "Apparently everyone saw signs except me," I replied, thinking of Melissa's careful confession that she'd noticed oddities. I was too busy trusting the two people who least deserved it. Each day brought new discoveries of betrayal. While organizing the guest room closet, manic cleaning being my only effective distraction, I found a woman's scarf I didn't recognize, likely left behind during one of Stephanie's visits. In Ryan's desk, tucked beneath tax documents, was a birthday card to Daddy in Stephanie's handwriting, though ostensibly from Emma. The card was dated 8 months earlier, confirming they'd been playing house long before I caught them. Most painful was finding a hidden folder on our shared cloud storage, containing dozens of photos of Ryan, Stephanie, and Emma together in situations I'd known nothing about: a trip to the Children's Museum, a day at the beach, a Christmas morning gathering where they wore matching pajamas. They'd been building a family album while systematically destroying mine. Ryan's attempts to contact me shifted from apologetic to practical, then accusatory. His initial texts expressed remorse without actually accepting responsibility. "I never wanted to hurt you, and this isn't how I wanted things to end." When I didn't respond, he pivoted to logistics: "We need to discuss the house, and my name is still on the utilities." By the end of the second week, his tone turned hostile. "You're being childish ignoring me," he wrote. "We need to act like adults." The message that broke me came at 2 a.m. The paternity test confirmed what we suspected. I'm Emma's biological father. I have rights and responsibilities now that change everything. I blocked his number after that, instructing him to communicate through Natalie, who had offered to act as intermediary until I retained a divorce attorney. She reported that Ryan had emptied our joint checking account, fortunately only containing about $3,000, as I'd moved most of our savings to an individual account on her advice, claiming he needed it for family expenses. The phrase made me physically ill. His new family. The one he'd been building in secret while I underwent painful procedures trying to start our own. My first real shock came when I checked our online banking and discovered Ryan had been researching legal options for contesting paternity for months, using our joint credit card to pay for consultations with family law specialists. The ultimate betrayal wasn't just the affair, but the meticulous planning that had gone into his exit strategy. One afternoon, when I thought I was finally strong enough to face the world, I ventured to a coffee shop 3 blocks from our house. As I waited in line, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Stephanie. "Ryan told me you're blocking his attempts to resolve things amicably. This isn't just about you anymore. Emma deserves to have her father in her life without your drama making everything harder. You need to accept reality and move on like a grown-up." The sheer audacity stole my breath. I abandoned my place in line and hurried back home, where I collapsed on the bathroom floor, hyperventilating. How dare she lecture me about acceptance after systematically destroying my life? How dare she position herself as the reasonable party when she'd betrayed our friendship in the most fundamental way possible? When Ryan came to collect more belongings that weekend, I made sure Melissa's husband Jake was with me. I couldn't trust myself to maintain composure alone, and I didn't trust Ryan not to manipulate the situation if no witnesses were present. "You look terrible," were Ryan's first words upon seeing me. "You should take better care of yourself." "Your concern is noted and unwelcome," I replied, standing in the foyer with arms crossed. "Take what you need and get out." "This hostility isn't necessary," he continued, moving past me toward his office. "We were good together once. We can be civil now." "Civil?" I laughed. "You want civility after sleeping with my best friend for years? After lying to my face while I was going through fertility treatments? After using our money to build a secret life with them? That's not how it happened, and you know it," he snapped, his reasonable facade cracking. "I never planned any of this." Feelings developed. "Life is complicated." "Fidelity isn't complicated," I countered. "It's actually remarkably straightforward." As he filled boxes with books and electronics, I noticed him eyeing the wedding photo still on our mantel. "You should take that down," he said. "It's not healthy to dwell on the past." Something in me snapped. I grabbed the silver frame and hurled it against the wall, watching with satisfaction as glass shattered across the hardwood floor. Problem solved. Jake stepped between us as Ryan's face darkened. "That's enough," he said firmly. "Ryan, get your stuff and go. Ashley, let's wait in the kitchen." After Ryan left, Jake swept up the broken glass while I sat numbly at the kitchen island. "He's not worth your anger," he said gently. "Save your energy for rebuilding." That evening, I received another message from Stephanie, this time a barrage of accusations about harassing Ryan during the move and acting unstable. She ended with, "Emma asks about her Auntie Ashley sometimes, but how can I let her near someone so bitter and vengeful? You have no right to judge our family when you can't even handle your emotions." The word family triggered a fresh wave of pain. They were positioning themselves as the victims, recasting me as the villain in their narrative. The reality distortion was both impressive and terrifying. My first therapy session that week was both devastating and cathartic. Dr. Winters, a divorce specialist recommended by Natalie, listened without judgment as I poured out the whole sordid story. "What you're experiencing is trauma," she said when I finally fell silent. "Betrayal of this magnitude affects the brain similarly to physical assault. Your feelings, the rage, the grief, the disorientation, they're all normal responses to abnormal circumstances. When does it stop hurting?" I asked, sounding like a wounded child. "It doesn't stop entirely," she answered with gentle honesty. "But it changes form. Right now, it's a tidal wave threatening to drown you. Eventually, it becomes more manageable, like carrying a stone in your pocket. You'll always know it's there, but it won't prevent you from living." I clung to that image in the days that followed. The stone in my pocket. Something I could carry without being crushed beneath its weight. The divorce proceedings began with clinical efficiency. Natalie recommended Helena Burgess, a divorce attorney known for her ruthless competence, particularly in cases involving infidelity. At our first meeting, Helena's office, all sleek surfaces and modern art, seemed at odds with her warm, grandmotherly appearance. "Don't let the gray hair fool you," she said, noting my surprise. "I've been dismantling unfaithful husbands' lives for 30 years. Now, tell me everything, and don't spare details. The more ammunition I have, the better." I provided her with the private investigator's reports, bank statements showing Ryan's suspicious expenditures, and screenshots of inappropriate texts. She listened, occasionally making notes, her expression revealing nothing. "Michigan is a no-fault divorce state," she explained when I finished. "We can't use the affair as grounds for divorce. However," she added with a slight smile, "evidence of financial infidelity, using marital assets to fund the affair, can impact property division. And we have plenty of that." Ryan's response to my filing came swiftly. His attorney, a slick downtown lawyer specializing in father's rights, submitted paperwork claiming financial hardship due to his new family obligations. He was seeking alimony and a larger portion of our assets, arguing that my career had flourished during our marriage while he had sacrificed professional opportunities to support me. "This is absurd," I sputtered, reading his filing in Helena's office. "His architecture firm is doing better than ever. He made partner last year." "It's a standard tactic," Helena said dismissively. "They're testing to see what sticks." Notice they're already positioning Emma as his dependent, laying groundwork for his family man image. The first court appearance loomed like a storm on the horizon. I bought a conservative navy dress and practiced answering questions with Helena, who warned me that displaying excessive emotion could undermine my position. "The judge doesn't care about your feelings," she cautioned. "They care about facts, figures, and maintaining an appearance of fairness. Save your tears for therapy." Walking into the courthouse that morning, I was blindsided by Stephanie's presence. She sat directly behind Ryan in the gallery, Emma mercifully absent. Her expression as I passed was a mixture of defiance and smug satisfaction that made my blood boil. "Ignore her," Helena whispered. "She's trying to provoke you." The hearing itself was brief and focused on temporary arrangements while the divorce proceeded. Ryan's attorney argued he needed access to our home to retrieve essential items. My side countered with evidence he'd already taken most of his belongings and had established residence elsewhere. The judge ruled he could return once more with a court officer present, a small victory that nonetheless left me shaking. Outside the courtroom, I overheard Stephanie loudly telling someone on the phone that I'd appeared completely unhinged during the proceedings. She couldn't even look at Emma's father without falling apart, she said, deliberately within my earshot. Some women just can't handle life's challenges. The public humiliation extended beyond the courthouse. Ryan's family, who had once welcomed me warmly, closed ranks around him completely. His mother, who had called me daughter for 5 years, sent a cold email explaining they needed to prioritize their relationship with their granddaughter. She didn't acknowledge the circumstances of the discovery or express any sympathy for my situation. Our social circle fractured along predictable lines. Mutual friends uncomfortable with taking sides gradually stopped contacting me altogether. Others made their allegiances clear through social media, where I discovered Ryan and Stephanie had announced their relationship with a tastefully filtered photo of them with Emma, captioned "Family is what you make it." The post had dozens of supportive comments, including several from people who had attended our wedding. "You should stay off social media," Melissa advised after finding me staring blankly at my phone. "Nothing good comes from digital self-harm." She was right, but I couldn't stop myself from occasionally checking, compulsively scratching at a wound that couldn't heal. Each new photo of their family adventures twisted the knife deeper. The divorce papers themselves arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who asked for my signature with bored indifference, unaware he was handing me the official end of my marriage. The thick envelope sat unopened on my kitchen counter for hours as I moved around it like it might detonate if disturbed. When I finally steeled myself to read the documents, the clinical language describing the dissolution of our union felt surreal. Irreconcilable differences seemed an absurdly inadequate description for what had happened. There was no legal terminology for husband impregnated best friend before our wedding and carried on a years-long affair while I underwent fertility treatments. As predicted, Ryan was seeking half the value of our home, despite his name not being on the mortgage, a portion of my retirement accounts, and ongoing support while he stabilized his new family situation. His financial disclosure conveniently omitted recent bonuses and minimized his firm's success. "He's hiding assets," Helena confirmed after reviewing the paperwork. "We'll request a forensic accountant. If he's being deceptive now, it won't play well with the judge." The true depth of Ryan and Stephanie's callousness became apparent when I encountered them unexpectedly at Riverside Mall. I had ventured out for new work clothes, my old wardrobe suddenly feeling like it belonged to a different person. Turning a corner near the food court, I froze at the sight of them seated at a table with Emma between them, the picture of domestic bliss. Stephanie spotted me first. Instead of showing discomfort or shame, she whispered something to Ryan, who turned and saw me. Then, deliberately, she leaned over and kissed him before taking Emma's hand and leading her toward the carousel, casting a triumphant glance in my direction as they passed. The message was clear: "You're replaceable. We've already moved on. This is our family now." I abandoned my shopping bags in the middle of the department store and fled to my car, where I sat hyperventilating until a security guard knocked on my window to check if I needed medical assistance. The mall incident was followed by rumors circulating among our former friends. According to Melissa, Ryan was telling people I had been emotionally abusive throughout our marriage, controlling his friendships and isolating him. In his revisionist history, his affair with Stephanie had been a desperate escape from my toxic behavior. "No one who actually knows you believes it," Melissa assured me. "But people love drama and it gives them an excuse to support the new couple without feeling guilty." The strangest blow came when Emma's paternity test results were formally entered into the court record. Despite Ryan's text claiming he was Emma's father, the official results showed a negative match. Ryan was not Emma's biological father after all. "This changes the narrative significantly," Helena noted with satisfaction. "He's choosing to stay with your friend despite not being the child's father. It undermines his whole family obligations argument." Yet even this revelation didn't deter them. Ryan amended his court filings to indicate he was assuming a paternal role for Emma and had formed a significant attachment warranting legal recognition. He was now pursuing formal adoption, with Stephanie's enthusiastic support. I reached rock bottom approximately 6 months after the anniversary dinner that had shattered my world. Despite Helena's warnings to avoid direct contact, I found myself driving past Stephanie's apartment after a particularly difficult therapy session. To my horror, their cars were both in the parking lot. Without fully intending to, I pulled in and sat watching the building, wondering what their life looked like inside those walls. Did they laugh about me? Did they sleep in the bed I had helped Stephanie select after her divorce? Did Emma ask about me at all? As if conjured by my thoughts, the three of them emerged from the building, headed toward Ryan's car. They were dressed nicely, perhaps for dinner or a family portrait. Emma skipped between them, holding both their hands, being periodically lifted into the air with squeals of delight, the classic parent swing. The sight cracked something fundamental inside me. This was what I had wanted with Ryan, the easy family dynamic, the child's laughter, the sense of belonging together. But it had never been mine to have, not really. Even during our fertility treatments, he had been building this alternate life. I started the car and drove home in a trance, moving on autopilot through my empty house. In the bathroom medicine cabinet, I found the leftover sleeping pills prescribed during those first hellish weeks after the discovery. I stood staring at the bottle, understanding for the first time how people could contemplate permanent escapes from temporary pain. The thought of my parents receiving the news jolted me back to reality. I flushed the pills, called the suicide hotline, and spent 3 hours talking to a gentle-voiced stranger until the darkest moment passed. The next morning, I called Dr. Winters and admitted how close I'd come to the edge. "You've been trying to process this trauma alone," she said. "I think it's time to consider a support group. Being around others who truly understand can be powerful medicine." That weekend, I attended my first meeting of a divorce support group held in a community center downtown. Sitting in a circle with 8 strangers united only by the common experience of broken vows, I finally felt something loosen in my chest. Here, I didn't need to explain the peculiar grief of betrayal. Here, no one suggested I move on or find closure as if healing followed a convenient timeline. "My husband left me for my sister," said a woman named Diana, her voice steady despite her devastating words. "It's been 2 years, and I still have days when I can barely function. But they're less frequent now. And I've started building a life that's authentically mine, not defined by their betrayal." For the first time since my world imploded, I glimpsed a possible future where Ryan and Stephanie's actions didn't define my every waking moment. It was a tiny spark of hope, but I clung to it fiercely. 6 months after hitting rock bottom, I sat across from Dr. Winters in her sun-dappled office for what we'd agreed would be our final regular session. I'd continue with monthly check-ins, but the intensive weekly therapy that had kept me afloat was no longer necessary. "When you first came to me," she observed, reviewing her notes, "you described yourself as hollowed out. Those were your exact words. How would you describe yourself today?" I considered the question carefully. "Reconstructed," I finally answered. "Not the same as before, and still with some rough edges, but solid. Real." She smiled, noting something in her elegant handwriting. "That's significant progress, Ashley. Trauma changes us, there's no going back to who we were before. The goal is to integrate the experience rather than overcome it." Integration had become my focus in recent months. Instead of trying to erase Ryan and Stephanie from my history, I acknowledged the role they'd played and the lessons. However painful, their betrayal had taught me. Chief among them, resilience wasn't about avoiding breaks but about how you pieced yourself back together afterward. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier, ending not with the dramatic courthouse confrontation I'd once imagined but with signatures on documents and a brief video conference with the judge. Ryan received less than he'd demanded, though still more than he deserved. I kept the house after buying out his portion, a financial stretch that felt worth it to maintain some stability. "It's just a building," Melissa had reminded me when I agonized over the decision. "You can sell it later if you want a fresh start elsewhere. Give yourself time before making major changes." She was right, as usual. Living among memories had been difficult initially, but gradually I'd reclaimed each space. Ryan's office became my yoga room. Our bedroom received a complete makeover, new furniture and paint erasing the setting of intimate moments now tainted by his duplicity. The guest room where I'd found Stephanie's scarf became a home office for the freelance marketing work I'd started taking on alongside my corporate job. Reconnecting with old passions proved unexpectedly healing. I joined a local photography club, reviving a hobby I'd largely abandoned during marriage. My weekends, once centered around Ryan's preferences, now filled with exhibitions, hiking trips to capture landscapes, and evening workshops on technique. Through the club, I formed friendships uncomplicated by connections to my past life. The most significant change came when my company announced expansion plans, including a new office in Seattle. When my boss mentioned they were seeking internal candidates for management positions there, I surprised myself by expressing interest. "I never pictured you leaving Michigan," she said, clearly pleased by my enthusiasm. "The position would be a step up, more responsibility, larger team, better compensation. Are you sure you're ready for such a big change?" "I'm more than ready," I replied with certainty. "There's nothing holding me here anymore." The interview process moved quickly. 2 weeks after my final therapy session, I accepted the Seattle position, giving myself 3 months to prepare for relocation. Selling the house, the last significant tie to my marriage, proved less wrenching than anticipated. The young couple who purchased it spoke excitedly about starting a family there, and I found myself genuinely hoping they'd build something authentic within those walls. Through all these changes, I maintained strict no contact with Ryan and Stephanie. Their occasional attempts to communicate, usually around financial matters that could have been handled through attorneys, were redirected appropriately. I'd learned that boundaries weren't selfish but essential for healing. A month before my scheduled move, Melissa organized a farewell dinner with our small circle of loyal friends. Over dessert at my favorite restaurant, she raised her glass in a toast. "To Ashley, who taught us all what true strength looks like. Seattle doesn't know how lucky it's about to get." Later that evening, as we walked to our cars, she mentioned casually, "I ran into Natalie yesterday. She heard from someone at her firm that Ryan and Stephanie's relationship is already showing cracks. Apparently, they had a very public argument at Emma's preschool graduation. She was overheard telling him that Emma doesn't need to call him daddy since the test proved he isn't." I waited for the satisfaction this news should have brought, the vindication of their paradise proving false. Instead, I felt a strange detachment, as if hearing about characters in a movie I'd seen long ago. "I hope Emma's okay," I said genuinely. "She's the only innocent party in all this." 2 days later, fate orchestrated a final encounter I'd been dreading and needing in equal measure. At a small coffee shop across town, a place I'd chosen specifically to avoid familiar faces, I looked up from my laptop to find Stephanie standing before me, appearing as shocked by the coincidence as I felt. For a long moment, we simply stared at each other. She looked different, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes partially concealed by makeup. The triumphant glow I'd last seen at the mall had dimmed considerably. "Can I sit?" she finally asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. My instinct was to refuse, to protect the peace I'd worked so hard to achieve. But something, curiosity, perhaps, or the desire for some final resolution, made me nod. She placed her coffee on the table with shaking hands. "I heard you're moving to Seattle." "News travels fast," I replied neutrally. "Melissa mentioned it when I ran into her at the pharmacy." Stephanie paused, staring into her cup. "I'm not here to justify what happened. There's no justification. But I need you to know it wasn't about hurting you." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "That's the problem, Steph. It wasn't about me at all. Neither of you considered me enough to factor my feelings into your decisions." She flinched at the truth of it. "I was jealous," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "You had everything so together, the career, the beautiful house, the devoted husband. After Greg left, watching your perfect life was torture. When Ryan and I connected, it felt like finally taking something for myself." "We weren't perfect," I said after a moment. "No marriage is. But we could have worked through our problems if he'd been honest. If you'd been a true friend. Tears spilled down her cheeks, smearing her carefully applied mascara. I know. I've lost my best friend, and now things with Ryan are falling apart too. He resents that Emma isn't his, and I resent that he's still comparing our life to what he had with you. We're making each other miserable. Part of me, a small, vindictive part one wasn't proud of, savored her unhappiness. But the larger part, the self I'd been rebuilding through therapy and reflection, felt only tired sadness at the waste of it all. I can't absolve you, Stephanie. That's not why I'm moving forward with my life. I'm doing it because I deserve better than defining myself by what you two did. I gathered my belongings, preparing to leave not just the coffee shop but this chapter of my story. As I stood, Stephanie looked up with reddened eyes. Are you happy? She asked, sounding genuinely curious. I considered the question carefully. I'm at peace, I answered truthfully. The rest is coming. My final week in Michigan passed in a blur of packing and goodbyes. On my last evening, I drove to the lakefront where Ryan had proposed, watching the sunset paint the water in spectacular hues of orange and pink. I'd avoided this spot for over a year, fearful of the memories it held. Now I reclaimed it, acknowledging both the joy and pain it represented without letting either define me. As darkness fell over the water, I whispered a final farewell, not to Ryan or Stephanie, but to the woman I'd been. The one who measured her worth through others' perceptions. The one who believed in fairy tales rather than the complex, sometimes painful reality of human relationships. The one who needed external validation to feel complete. Seattle welcomed me with persistent rain and stunning mountain views. My apartment, smaller than the house but filled with carefully chosen items that sparked joy, quickly became a sanctuary. I arranged my photography along the walls, landscapes capturing light breaking through storm clouds, symbolic without being heavy-handed. My new team proved talented and engaging, the challenges of the position stretching me professionally in ways my comfortable Michigan role hadn't for years. Weekends were spent exploring my new city, discovering neighborhoods and restaurants, hiking nearby trails when weather permitted. I joined a divorce recovery group more focused on moving forward than processing past hurts, meeting monthly in a community center downtown. 6 months into my new life, I received a text from Melissa with a link to a social media post. Despite my better judgment, I clicked. It showed Emma at her 4th birthday party, surrounded by friends but with no sign of Ryan in any photos. The caption, written by Stephanie, made no mention of him. Later that day, an email arrived from my former neighbor in Michigan, mentioning casually that Ryan had moved out of Stephanie's apartment and into a building across town. The information created barely a ripple in my consciousness. Their story continued without me, as mine continued without them. The entanglement that had once seemed unbreakably painful had dissolved with time and distance. On the anniversary of the fateful dinner, now 2 years in the past, I sat on my small balcony overlooking Puget Sound, a glass of wine in hand and a journal open before me. I'd begun writing regularly, finding clarity through the process of arranging thoughts on paper. That evening, I wrote not about betrayal or loss, but about unexpected gifts, the strength I'd discovered within myself, the authentic friendships that had withstood life's storms, the freedom of building a life aligned with my true values rather than external expectations. The last line I wrote that night became something of a personal mantra in the months that followed. Sometimes losing what you thought you wanted leads you directly to what you truly need. The journey from that devastating moment when a child's innocent words revealed a complex betrayal to the peace I'd found was neither straight nor simple. It contained detours through rage and despair, moments of backsliding, and gradual, often imperceptible progress. But it was my journey, shaped by my choices rather than others' actions. As I watched the sun set over my new horizon, I realized that was perhaps the most important lesson of all. We cannot control what happens to us, only how we respond. And sometimes, our response to life's most painful moments becomes the foundation upon which we build our most authentic selves. Have you ever experienced betrayal that ultimately led you to a better understanding of yourself? Did it make you stronger in ways you never expected? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you found value in my journey, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who might need to hear that there's light after darkness. Thank you for being part of my healing by listening, and remember, your worth is never determined by how others treat you, but by how you treat yourself in response. Until next time, take care of your beautiful hearts.